Well, we do welcome all the mothers, and we're just so grateful for this day that we get to celebrate you. Today, we are beginning a sermon series that's entitled Blueprint, and in this series, we're going to specifically be looking at what we would say is like God's designs for particular areas of our lives. A blueprint was something that was essentially invented or at least it was fine-tuned in the 19th century with the purposes of distributing information from a designer to people who were going to subcontractors and contractors and suppliers in order to build whatever the design had been intended to be built. And so in a very similar way, it is in this series that we are going to be looking back at God's design for areas of our lives, like motherhood, fatherhood, God's design for you being a leader, God's design for your calling, God's design for you just pursuing the life that God would have for you, God's design for a nation even. And as we go through this series, we're going to be looking back at God's blueprint for those particular areas of our lives. And we're going to be honing in on characters of the Bible. Now today, we are not necessarily going to be honing in on a particular character of the Bible as we discuss God's design for being a mother. Instead, we're going to look at a few characters in our church. And we have some mothers that are going to come and they're going to share with us their experience of motherhood. They're going to share with us some of the experiences that they've had, whether it be challenges or joys or pleasures, or as the world has changed and even as they've gone into maybe even becoming a grandparent, what exactly that has been like for them. And I think that through that we will be able to find great wisdom in their experiences. Proverbs Chapter 4, verse 6 and 7 says this: "Do not forsake wisdom, and she will protect you. Love her, and she will watch over you." Now, men, notice that wisdom is referred in a feminine sense. All right? And so I think there's something to be said for that. Actually, all throughout the Bible, wisdom is always referred to as a she. And so, guys, just so you know that if you want to know where the wisdom's at, you need to look to a woman or maybe your wife in your life. Proverbs chapter 12, verse 15 says, "The way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but a wise man listens to advice." And I think that over the next few moments that you're going to hear some splendid advice from the ladies that we have that are going to talk with us today. So with that, I'd like to invite up the particular people in our panel. So you ladies, you can come on forward. You just want to walk up these steps right here. And with the rest of you, give them a warm welcome, please. Go ahead and jump on in. So, if you could, what I'd love to have happen is just have each of you introduce yourselves and just kind of tell a little bit about where you're at right now in life. And then Janice and Angela, if you could share that microphone, that would be awesome. Or however, whatever works best for you. Okay. Anyway, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Angela Hopwood. I'm a mother of three daughters that are ages 12, 10, and 9, and we've been at the church for almost 10 years now. And I've been in Denver, Colorado for 10 years, so that's a little bit about me.
Hi, I'm a mom of 3 as well, only mine are older. So I have a 37-year-old son and a 34-year-old daughter, and I have a son in heaven who would be 28 this November. So we lived in Colorado 35 years. My husband just retired, and we've been in Valley View for about 10 years now, I think, as well.
My name is Deanne Kirby, and I am the mom of 2. I have a son who's 20, and he's in California in college right now. He's coming back soon. And then I have a son who is 17. He'll be a senior in high school next year. We have lived in the Denver area for 20 years. We moved here from Colorado when our oldest was 6 months old, and previous to that, my husband and I grew up in Southern California. So Denver is kind of a haven compared to where we grew up. So.
That's great. Well, and as I ask some questions of you and you share with everyone here, just feel free to jump in. You don't have to always go in this particular order. But with that, so today we celebrate Mother's Day, and so tell us, what is an aspect of being a mother that's so exciting for you?
I I've just loved watching my boys grow up, and it's been fast. It's been really fast. I look at both of them
It
and
doesn't
can't
always
believe.
feel that way.
Yeah, I can't believe how quickly it's surreal to watch them graduate high school and get ready to go out into the world. And I think that's what brings the most joy, is launching a child off. In a lot of fear sometimes, but joy to launch a child off into the world that you know they're ready, but you're not sure, and watching them make mistakes and become resilient and recover, and then come back and say, you were right. I like that, that's just, that
When
happens.
exactly does that happen? Some people are still waiting. I just asked for them.
Yeah, I think our first had said that a couple of times over the last couple of years. He's pretty much by himself in Northern California figuring things out, and so a few times he's called and said, remember that time? So it's a while. You got a ways to go.
Oh my gosh! All right.
Our oldest didn't come to that conclusion for a long time. So it doesn't always happen right away. Now, our daughter was amazing. She watched her brother make a lot of mistakes. And so she said, as a junior in high school, "You guys have a lot of wisdom," and we about fainted. And she said, "Can you tell us some of the things?" And we were in awe. So that was good. But it's usually around the time they leave the house and they go to college, and all of a sudden you're smart again. And they are really proud of you as a parent again, and they need you, and they actually want to come home. Yeah.
That's great. Well, so for you, just being a
I'm
mother.
still in the phase. I've definitely hit the phase just recently where I don't know anything. So I'm not there yet, so I'm looking forward to getting to where they're at.
Well, now Angela, she was sharing with me as we were dialoguing a little bit about this time we would share together this morning, that she did not grow up attending church regularly in a home that was too terribly vibrant in faith. And so, what exactly for you, Angela, caused you to want to raise your children up in a different way? Not to say that was too terribly bad, but
Yeah.
what was it about your faith that caused you to maybe do something different?
So I grew up in a wonderful home. I have two wonderful parents. It seemed like the most perfect family you could have. But we were missing something, and that was faith. We didn't attend church regularly, and there was nothing wrong with my childhood at all. It was a very loving home, but we did not have Christ. It was not centered on Christ. And when I was 14, tragedy struck my family, and my brother, who was my only sibling, passed away of cancer. And he was 19 years old. And when that happened, I had to go through my high school years, those really fragile years, as most people know, with a lot of up and down, a lot of turmoil. And this wonderful, happy home that I knew just fell apart. Parents were gone, they were grieving alone, and there was no faith there. My best friend growing up, her family was in faith, and they were going to church. So I was getting invited a lot in my high school years to their home, and going to church camps with them. And I could see that between the two of our families, that was probably the thing that I could tell was missing. So I knew at that point in my life, growing up, my high school years, I knew I needed Christ. I just didn't know how to have him. And it's not like I just ran off immediately and decided to go to church. I went through college, and I still kept struggling. I got married. My husband and we got married, and we had 3 kids within 3 years.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I found myself one day just with my babies struggling. I was angry, I was frustrated, I was tired, I was exhausted, and I was just struggling. And Patrick and we had our hands full. We lived in a home that was a money pit, and it was just, we were crumbling. And I think at that point, I finally caved, and I was seeking counseling for it because I couldn't understand why I was angry all the time. I was struggling with anger. And that counselor kind of it was Southwest Christian Counseling, which I didn't know at the time that they were Christian counselors, but it's how God works in life. And they just kind of looked at me and they said, why don't you try a church? Have you ever tried a church? And went right back to that time in my high school years where we had tragedy in our home and how everything was crumbling. And I was like, yeah, I need to do that. So from that point on, I just kind of have been following it and stuck with it. So.
Yeah. Have you found that now that you're bringing Jesus into your home, that it's something that's helping through types of challenges, and probably not to, obviously the challenges you face aren't to that scale, but how have you found that it's helped, even with your parenting and with your children?
Yeah, it's like, I feel like I have an answer. Like my anger at the time when they were little, it was just always elevated because I felt frustrated. I didn't know how to handle children that were, I remember my 2-year-old, she had books scattered everywhere, and I was tired of picking up after her, and I just felt angry all the time. And now it's funny, the other day I was out, I coach, and so I'm facing a lot of anger on the field by coaches around me, and it's a different world, let me say that. But one of my parents came up to me and he looked at me when there was an awful thing happening between an umpire and another coach, and he looked at me and he said, I have never seen somebody so calm and patient and just so good with these kids, and I never see you angry with them. And I was like, there's only one answer, that's Christ, because I didn't do that. I grew up, anybody that knows me when I was growing up, I was a pretty angry person. So, yeah, I think that's
well, we wouldn't know that.
Yeah.
And also, I think that's a great way to put it, that now you have an answer.
Yes, I have an answer, and
Yeah.
I'm just sticking to it.
Now, Janice is as many of you are, a grandparent, relatively new grandparent, and so just tell us a little bit about what it's been like to transition from being a mother to now being a grandparent, and what that experience has been like.
Well, one, I threatened my children I was going to adopt grandkids if they didn't give me some sooner or later. Because I thought we had 10 years between first and last. I wasn't going to have empty nest. I was just going to have kids because I have big wings and I like lots of chicks under my wings, and my kids were just not producing for me. So when I finally got my grandkids, it was the best day. It really was a sweet time to hold that little baby for the first time, and I didn't really feel a transition. It just felt very natural to me. And as most of us who are grandparents, when you hold that grandchild for the first time, it's like, oh, this is the most incredible moment. It really is. It's so fun. And my husband was like, well, he didn't care. I'll be a grandpa, but he didn't, that was kind of getting him old. And I'm just like so charged. And they asked him, well, what do you want to be called? And he said, Papa, right away. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. And here I had been thinking about it. But being a grandparent, I don't know, I just love it. They can't do really a whole lot of wrong. And I'm not a grandma that just lets them get away with stuff. I like to make sure they're behaving, but it's wonderful.
Mm-hmm. So now, taking on the grandparent role, you raised your kids up in the Lord, and obviously you want to see that happen with your grandkids as well. And so what's been what approach have you taken in regards to that?
I guess God is very nature. You see God in nature, you see God in people, you see God in events and things. And I try to bring that out a lot. And growing up on a farm, I saw God every day doing amazing things. And so I love to bring that type of education about God to the kids. And we like to go on explores, and we like to have little experiments, and we like to do little things that remind us of who is the creator of these things. And I also, praying, we make sure that that's incorporated, but it's not forced. I don't feel like that's ever a good approach. I don't feel like we have to be religious. I don't like that at all. I didn't raise our kids that way. It was mostly that we wanted to show them who God is, and He's a loving God who does amazing things and is always with us.
That's great. Thank you. Well, now, Deanne, So you've got one child who's away, and then you've got another who, you still have one with you, correct? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how has that been kind of going into the teenage years? Just you've seen parenting shift from an adolescent, obviously, to somebody who's about to go out on their own.
I think when you are a parent of adolescents and teenagers, you see a lot of cycles, like the you don't know anything cycle, to the we don't want to hang out with you cycle, to the you're a dork cycle, to the, just cycling through a lot of different behaviors. And but what I think I see the most raising teenagers is the effort and the modeling and the work we put in when they were small. I don't know if it's still a thing, but it used to. I think Dr. Dobson said that if you don't have your children under control, and I don't mean like under your thumb, but if you don't have a foundation built by the time they're toddlers, it's really a struggle later on in life. And so I think we've seen our teenagers still love to come to church with us. We've seen our older son find a church in California and find professors at his college who are Christians, and find organizations and to teach Bible study to other kids. And to me, that is it's fulfilling and it's exciting to know that the hard work that we put in when they were little, because it is hard work. When they are little, it is a lot of hard work. And then to see our family really be a family centered around Jesus and able to, we use a lot of examples too and call it out for what it is. Wow, God is so good. I can't believe that happened. Or in a hard time, you know what? You need to stop and we need to pray about that. Or sharing a favorite verse. Those are just some of the things that we've done to kind of keep that momentum in our family, I guess.
Yeah, and really, in all of this, I know some of you don't have children, but for all of us, it's just a great lesson there to call it out for what it is. Don't, as you want to influence others for Jesus, call something out for what it is. It's God's blessing, whatever it may be, to the point that you were making there with, there's an answer, where at times there wasn't one before. Now, how do you still influence your children as they're in college, or about to go into college?
We talk a lot. We make sure that we have dinner together as a family. We all get busy. Our boys are busy baseball players. It takes over our life. It's about to start in a couple weekends, up again for summer. But it's always been important for us to spend time together as a family, whether we're watching a movie or we're eating dinner together. I work in education and I see overoccupied kids. We hand them an iPad, we hand them a phone, we get them going to 5 different activities throughout the week, and we purposely limited that. They can go to church activities, they can have a sport, and if they wanted to play an instrument, they could play an instrument, but we didn't double up on sports and run ragged, and because our relationship with our kids is the most important thing after our relationship with Jesus. And so we try to model that to our kids. And also as a husband and wife, we try to model what a strong married relationship looks like. They've seen us fight and argue, but they've seen us apologize, and they've seen us make up and make a change. And they've seen us get snipey with them and then apologize and say, oh, okay, that was not the best choice in words or the best choice in voice level, whatever the case was, and then own up to a mistake and move on from there, because that's what we want our kids to do. Make mistakes and then make better choices the next time and learn from that.
Take responsibility. Yeah, I always know it's a good day when I don't have to apologize to one of my kids for something I've done. It's always a good day, or I'm getting at least to a point where it's like it's a good 2 days. But you're so right, though. We model that for them, and then they will be willing to do that later on in life. That's great. Now, Angela, with the young ones, we have mothers here, just great caretakers, and they have little ones as well. What's something that you found that's helped you to, we can at times can go too hard to find balance to where you're not just wearing yourself out and running yourself ragged. What is something that's helped you with that?
I think for me, it's definitely making sure I have quiet time and doing that daily, because if I don't take that time, and I don't beat myself up if I can't get to it first thing in the morning. Sometimes it's 10 o'clock in the morning, sometimes it's when I'm going to bed. But if I don't have that and I've I'm not perfect, so I haven't had it every day, but the days I don't have it, I definitely feel if I didn't take that time with God, I was more stressed out with my kids. Things just didn't go as smooth as I wanted, and I always have that hindsight where I go back and look at my day with my kids, and I'm like, oh, I didn't have my time with you, God, and I really should have taken that time. So that's probably the number one thing for me, is to make sure I've got that time and spending with him, because the days are very, very busy when they're young.
Do you use the YouVersion Bible app?
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
That's
Yeah,
great.
just something on my phone, because it's easy, and I also like to sit down and have a hard version as well, but where I'm reading through it. But that's probably the number one thing. And then I think the other thing is, when you are running, and she was making a good point, when you are running ragged, going back and forth between things, car rides are a wonderful time to be talking to your children and going through different lessons learned, asking. I really tell my kids to put their electronics down in the car. We don't usually have those going on, because that's my time with them a lot. And we talk about how their days went, how they were interacting, what challenges did they face with kids at school, and we pray in the car a lot. And so that's, when you're busy, that's probably the big time. And then I would just really, really say, when you have little kids, housework is housework. Just like, if your kids are coming to you and they have something they really need from you, let the dishes just be the dishes, and turn around and stop what you're doing and look at your children and spend time with them. Because she's absolutely right. I'm just now kind of coming through those days of where all my kids, my youngest is now 9, and I feel like that time that we had between ages 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, where when I was raising them, that we took that time and we carved out Bible time, and we carved out scriptures, and that has been a big foundation for them where they're at now. I am amazed at the stories they tell me at school of things that happen and how they respond to some of those. And the only thing I can answer, because I didn't guide that myself, is that they were here with Christ. They were in the church, and they knew how to respond because of that.
Yeah. I had a conversation with the woman. She was probably about 75 at the time, and she echoed that same thought. And hers was more from regret. And she said, if there was one thing I would have gone back and done differently as a parent, is I would have stopped doing the dishes, and I would have went and played the board game with my daughter when she asked. And there's just so much wisdom in that, because those are moments that you don't get back. And I love what you said there. You take advantage of those opportunities when you have a captive audience, whether it's at a dinner table or it's in the car, whenever you can really influence them well. And you spoke on technology, and this would be a question for all three of you, especially, Dean, you can even speak into this too, as you consider the challenges, the unique challenges that children are facing today. What have you seen, and how would you maybe offer some advice, maybe some wins that you've had in regards to that?
Sure. The first thing I see with children today is they are it's an on-demand society. I know a couple weeks ago you were talking about how we could only see certain cartoons on certain days of the week. Our kids have no concept of that. You're in the car, you hand them the phone, they can find whatever they want on YouTube, which can also be very dangerous. I work at an elementary school, and I see younger and younger children knowing things and saying things and doing things that I have not seen. I've been in education 28 years, and there's been a gradual shift for that. And the things that are said on the playground and the way that they act on the playground is very different than it was 28 years ago, and I think that they're desensitized and overstimulated by everything around them, and we're talking about little brains that are sponges, and you hear a swear word once and it's there forever. And if it's not something that is caught and stopped and said, you know what, we don't talk like that, we don't act like that. If it's fostered in a home, then you have a bigger problem. And I think that my advice, take it for what you wish, is that you really limit that screen time for those little people. They don't need to be occupied all the time. They don't need to be quiet. Well, they need to be quiet all the time, but we need replacement behaviors. So if they can't be quiet in a restaurant and you want to hand them their phone instead, use that as a teachable moment and say, hey, this is why we're quiet in the restaurant, because there's 50 other people in here and they don't want to hear you scream. Or, apply whatever appropriate discipline system that you use with them and practice that behavior with them. We let our kids, there's, free range parenting. I think I've seen that here and there. And you have one chance to raise your children from the time they're born until they go off on their own. And you don't want to look back and have those huge regrets. And really, they don't need to binge watch Scooby-Doo or whatever other thing they're watching. They need to be kids and play and learn from playing rather than having a screen in front of them.
One of the things that we would go on long drives to Idaho, 14, 15-hour drives, and we never had electronics. We could have had videos and stuff, but that was great talk time, teasing, laughing, stories. We would just really capitalize on their undivided attention. And the electronics, even back then, there was Atari Lynx, Game Boys, different things that they could use. And, kids need to know their parents want to be in their presence. They need to know that. And they also need chores. It's okay they do dishes with you. It's okay that they learn how to scrub the floor and clean up their own messes, and they need to be accountable for the things that they do. And it all builds responsibility and for them to have the part of the family. If they are just told to go do something all the time and you shoo them away, they're not feeling like they're part of the family. And they need the responsibility of asking to do something because you're their parent, you're not their friend. And a lot of our family friends became friends to their kids, and it was really a disservice to their children. We told our kids, we're not your friend. We're your parent first because we're accountable to God first in our parenting. And really, as a grandparent, it's the same thing. You really need to have their best interest that the Lord has. You're raising a godly person, and that's a challenge and it's a delight.
Let me jump. We've run a little tight on time here, and I want to just give this last little portion here, just a couple of minutes at least. Is speaking of challenges, Janice, Blake and you obviously encountered a very difficult challenge a few years back with your son, and for those here, they as Janice already alluded to, they lost a child who wasn't young, but was almost fully grown. And with that, there's just some lessons that can be learned for all of us, really, who lose a loved one. And specifically, as you lose a child, whether the child's born or not born, there's always a grieving process. And so would you just share just a little bit of wisdom for us in regards to that?
I think all of us as parents go, God, please, just don't take my kids. Just please don't. I lost a brother to suicide. He was 16 and 19, and I saw my parents grieve, and I was like, I can't do it. I'm not capable. And it's right. None of us are capable. We cannot grieve without the body of Christ. Every one of you who was with us at that time, who came up and loved on us, I can tell you there's a lot of people in here who have also lost children, whether it's miscarriage, whether it's, cancer, whether it's, our son died in a car accident at 23, and he was coming back from a wedding from Nebraska. And the young man who was driving was texting and looked away, lost control, and there were 5 people in the car. They should have all been dead. And God protected all of them. And it was time God knew that it was Sam, what was going to happen to Sam. And there was a lot of, I had just had back surgery. I was 2.5 weeks out from a major back surgery, and there was just a lot of stuff going on in our life. And it's a horrific memory. We're sitting at the kitchen table, we get the call, and it was from one of the kids in the car. And he said, Sam didn't make it. There's been an accident, and Blake lost it. He passed out, and your reaction in those moments, you'll never forget. It's not something that you go, oh, well, It's something that is so traumatic to you that, I didn't know how to respond. I mean, you can't prepare. I thought about it. I thought, how would I respond if my child died? I mean, it was nothing like what I thought. But what I really have to say is thank you to so many who prayed and so many who loved on us, and those of you who have lost children who walked alongside of us. That is what God talks about. You're the comforter. Now we're in that position to comfort those who lose children. So don't feel like you would ever impose on us to ask us about our experience, because we are more than willing to minister to you guys. Something else is that as a mom, when you birth that baby, that's why this is up here. Phil warned me. So when you birth your children, there's that umbilical cord. And when that child goes to heaven, it's still attached. It still feels very much a part of you. And it's taken over 3 years, but I finally have peace about Sam being with the Lord, that he's his child, not mine. He gave us Sam as a gift. And there's a big story behind all of that, which if you want to know about it, I am more than glad, so is Blake, to tell you about how Sam came into our lives. But it was a rich experience. There were 1,200 people at Sam's service. It was a time for the pastor, who was Sam's Bible teacher, to talk about how Sam went all in. And it was, a year and a half before he died that he decided to be all in for Christ. He struggled, he searched, and that's something else. When your kids are searching and saying, I don't believe in God, don't be scared. Don't be scared. That's good. That's a good thing. Seek and you will find. Don't feel like you failed them. Just encourage them to keep looking. Keep looking. Sam did. Sam found the Lord. He quit taking communion at 16, and right where Blake is right there, I watched him a year and a half before he died, 6 months after he got married, take communion again, and I lost it. You're all in. His Bible teacher told him, don't be on the fence. Don't be lukewarm. Either you're all in or you're all out, but God will spit you out if you're lukewarm. So when he was all in, it was like the best day of my life as a parent to watch him make a commitment. He'd made it twice before, but as an adult, he finally made the all-in commitment. So anyway, we're still journeying our grief process. You never get over it. You don't, but it becomes an easier pathway to accept that he's with the Lord, and you become more and more at peace with, one day, I know where my son is. That's the beauty about raising your children in the Lord, is that there is an ever after for your family.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. One of the advantages of this unique opportunity, is that now you have 3 stories. You have 3 connection points with people, 3 people that you can connect with. If there is something that you would like to ask advice about, if there is something that you would like to understand, wherever your situation is at, these are women that are available for you. So, would you all thank them for their time this morning? I'm going to have a word of prayer for us, and then the worship team's going to take it from there. Thank you, Father, for the hope that we have in your Son. And dear Lord, while many of us don't, most of us here do not know what it means to lose a child, God, we do know that you do. And so for those of us that are wrestling with that, may we connect with you in further and deeper ways because of that. Father, for all of us who are here, Lord, help us to make known, whether we have children, we don't have children, wherever we are, just to make known you. Lord, call it for what it is in our lives and continually point people towards you. We are all children of yours. We may not all be children of each other, but we are children of yours. And so, Lord, just help us to be great lights for you as we go forth. And thank you for who you have called us to be, and help us to embrace who we are. In Jesus' name.